Yeah, I may use some tree spacers like I mentioned, but the orchard itself, just some more work along those lines. I'd like to survey down here this section through here. Sorry, my hand's causing that to. So basically, like kind of where that, you can barely see there's a post there, but right there over to this fence line, and then wrapping up from over here by that oak to here. That's the next section of the orchard. I'd like to get it surveyed and, you know, essentially go through on the parts that have more than a tiny bit of slope and get those parts cut with the excavator into this kind of a row here where, you know, you've got a mound and then a flat. Makes it much easier to work with and gives a lot of the best soil to those row tops. And also, while we are working through our soil and improving it for depth and all that sort of thing, and increasing the drain down effect of that, we really need to help make sure that as much as we can, we keep the crown of the trees and plants to where it can dry. A lot of them do not like having a wet crown, which is like the top of the root ball right before it goes to the trunk. So that's part of what that is for. There's another breeze. Yeah, this one's top dyed and it's gone bushy, and I have to figure out whether I want to try and deal with that in some way and trim it and favor it up into more of a tree again. Probably I will at least get it up to where, you know, it's higher up relative to, you know, it's branching at the very base. But it's great to see that it's growing so vigorously and it's quite happy where it is. It's put down some great roots, so that's awesome. I will work on the water system this fall too. So as you've seen from previous videos over there, we've got our cisterns from the barn. They take in rainwater from the barn, and we've doled that out through the summertime supplementally to keep the trees, you know, growing and alive and whatnot, and it's nowhere near enough. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take the house water, which is off of a spring, and then run it up from over here on the other side of the barn, up the hillside. So kind of up there past that plum and those maples, not quite to those fir trees up there, is the edge of our property, and it's enough of a rise that I should be able to get some great pressure off of it. Pop a tank up there to supply the house, and then we won't need the pump anymore, which will save us on electricity, which is awesome. Keep it as a backup, but otherwise we won't use it unless we need to. And then we'll run a line along the slope here down, come down here almost like a little aqueduct through this sacrifice yard, and then just tap into the entry spot for the water there for the runoff. So instead of having to bring water up, water will come down. And it's just the water that will be in excess anyway, because we're going to run a ram pump from down here. It will take that water and it'll just always be pushing it. They're really fascinating equipment. Entirely mechanical, how they work to supply pressure. Super cool. We'll do when I get that project going, we'll show some of what's going on and share that with you guys. Super cool stuff. My pawpaws are doing really well. I've just got the 4. So the one that didn't come with a tree piece, and I kind of kept it shaded. It's got a little bit of sun scorch on the leaves, just a touch, but it's doing great. And then the 3 that have the grow tubes, those ones have all come up to the top and are poking out with some great vegetative growth. So next year they should really start to take off. I'm pretty excited about those. It'll be 7 years before I get anything off of those, more than likely, but still very excited about that. Once those start producing, that's going to be, you know, they've trialed them in the valley in a couple of places, and I've heard that there's a number of small family farm type of situations that have a tree or 3. But the trial that they did, they suffered a dieback, and the researchers couldn't figure out why. So I'm interested to see if they'll take and they'll stick around. They all in the trial they all died at 4 or 5 years old, 3, 4, 5 years old. So if they make it past that for here, I'll plant in more. I've got up here, I've got a quince right there, and then this one right here, all year long was just fighting and fighting and fighting for its life. The leaves would just brown and die and brown and die and brown and die, and something was attacking it. I hit it with a, look how, wow, that shows up even more green on the screen than it does in person. But I hit it with a little copper. I'm not interested in the long term in spraying in the orchard, but I'm also a practical man. So I've invested into these trees, and if they can grow out of a phase, or if it's a temporary thing that came with them from the nursery that's really bugging them, I will give it a shot and see if I can keep them alive through their first year to establish. One of the things that hits the trees in the valley, or can, is peach leaf curl, which affects most stone fruit, but peaches especially. And the first couple years can be challenging for peaches because of it. But if you have a disease-resistant variety, after 2 or 3 years in, and this we've seen this at my parents' place, they take off and they're fine. It doesn't really impact them anymore. They get to the point where the disease just isn't able to set in and injure the plant because they're so capable and vigorous. So this guy, we'll see how it does next spring, and if that comes back and ends up killing it, then I'll just replace it. But one year, a little spray. We had a couple of Asian pears that there's one down there that's still fighting it. Got the same spray. It's not. I mean, it may make it. It may not. It's all in the leaves, so it's not fire blight. It's not affecting the trunk. We'd have one Asian pear that, actually a European pear, that I'm convinced came to us from the nursery with fire blight, and it's not. I already ripped it out and got rid of the trunk and everything. So dealt with that. Looks like the goatees are out. These little guys are such goobers. They are both a frustration and a joy to have on the farm. Ours are Boers, and I intend to breed in a little bit of either some, I forget what they're called, Kiko, I think, or there's another breed, but just a little bit more emphasis on rangeability, so ability to eat off the land. And these guys they're doing fine. Like you can see, they're not in bad shape, but they're really kind of scaredy cats. So they're in the sacrifice yard right now, which is eaten down down to the nubs, which, I mean, it's a sacrifice yard, you expect that. But they spend quite a bit of time up here, and I feel like they could be a little fatter if they spent more time. They've got access to the forest right now, and there's plenty of brambles and other things. I mean, you can see in the background, brambles, very vegetative, and I let them in maybe 2 weeks ago, and they just don't spend a lot of time over there. I think that they eat a little bit, enough to be happy, and then they come back, and then they just browse through this area repeatedly over and over, which a lot of permaculturalists will talk about how goats can be one of the worst animals for the landscape, and you can really see why. You know, it's not that they're hungry, they're not hungry, but they will keep coming back and grazing over an area over and over again, like these ones are doing. So I've heard that I think it was the Kiko, is a little bit less prone to that, a little bit more, adventurous and willing to free range. Not that I want them escaping, because these ones have already done that more than enough. Goats will be goats in that respect, and you can't have a goat and expect that it's going to respect anything other than an atomic shelter to keep them where they're supposed to be. Although strangely enough, this space right here, I only have 3 lines protecting mostly just to keep the cows out. I don't care if the goats get in there, they're not heavy enough to damage any of the stuff down there on the cistern. And I have not seen them go through there at all. Bizarre little creatures. But awfully cute, and they have their uses. Man, do they ever help me with the blackberries when they want to. They just strip the leaves right off all of them. And a couple years of a program of the goat stripping the leaves down, and then me just thrashing with the mower. And I'm hoping that we'll have the blackberries really kind of push back quite a bit more. So you can see a spot up here where it's starting to green up again. This was a failed experiment. I felt like I had a little bit of extra water a couple weeks back, and so I sprinkled, and the difference between drip and sprinkling is huge. You spend so much more water to get very little effect with a sprinkle. Broadcast of water versus the drip puts it right where you need it. Of course, grass, you just need it all over the place. And I burned through both these tanks, almost what was left in them at the time, and that's all I got. It's just the grass started to green up again. And this rain will hopefully really perk everything up this 2-week period, and then hopefully after that we get a little bit of sunny weather so I can get out and do some more stuff again on my days off a little bit easier. But yeah, so I've put in about 30 minutes for you. If you're still watching, we'll keep doing some more of these and more of these updates. Now that so I'm filming this on my new Pixel, so hopefully the quality is better. I can already tell that it does a better job of holding the camera steady than my previous phone did, which makes sense. I mean, this is a 2-year-old phone versus an 8 or a 10-year-old phone, so there you go. But yeah, thanks for watching, and if there's things you're curious about or things you want me to talk more about, let me know, and I will start including some of that into the videos, and look for more updates going forward.